Hey everybody, it's Justin. Welcome back to the BTR Garage. Today we are going to be doing some truck upgrades on my 2010 Ford F150. We're going to be installing this Roadmaster Active Suspension kit to the rear of the truck. What this does is improve towing stability when you're towing heavy loads, and because we got a big tow trailer upgrade which I'll bring to you here in the near future, we wanted to get this installed on the truck just to make it a little bit more stable when carrying around the big loads on the truck. We're going to take a look at what's in the box here, then we'll go ahead and get started with the installation. We'll go ahead and get the box opened up. Of course, you will find an instruction manual which you'll want to follow verbatim. The unit itself comes pre-assembled, so there's no assembly required. You're going to find two little spacers, a black one and a white one, which we'll talk about later. And some of the tools you're going to need to get this job done will be a breaker bar, a screwdriver, and assortment of crescent wrenches and ratchets and sockets, some jack stands, an impact driver is helpful, and of course a jack. We're going to start by prying off the plastic cover on the wheel hub to get access to the wheel lugs. Your truck may or may not have one of these, mine did. Once that is popped off, we can grab our breaker bar and start loosening up the lug nuts on the wheel. You'll also want to chock the front wheels for safety, as you'll be jacking up the rear end of the truck, which we're going to be doing here. Place the jack under the rear differential pumpkin and get the truck up in the air. Put our jack stands into place, and then we can start removing the rear wheels. Once that is done, we'll go ahead and lower the rear end of the truck. We're going to place some smaller jack stands under the rear axle for extra safety, making sure that the axle is lowered to its maximum droop level. Getting the Roadmaster Active Suspension installed into the truck is actually pretty easy. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes per side, and you just need basic tools. What you're going to do is grab the unit itself, pick it up, everything is still together as it came out of the box. We're going to lay that hook over the top of the rear leaf spring and then just set the rest of the unit on top like this. Once it's in this position, the first thing we're going to do is take off the mounting rod or bolt here on the bottom or the end of the lower bracket. It's just a 19mm wrench or an adjustable wrench. Take that stuff off. And what's going to happen is the arm on the bottom is just going to fall down and lay alongside your leaf spring down here. And we have the big bolts and the tube that it goes through, and of course the nut that goes along with it. The next step is going to be lengthening this assembly back here, basically the rod, the threaded rod up at the top, and the coil spring. And you do that by simply grabbing a hold of the threaded rod up here, and you can start twisting the threaded coil spring by hand, and it's really loose, it's very easy to do. And as you're unthreading it, it's going to extend this assembly down, so then our bracket down here will actually fit below the leaf spring. Now once it looks like we have enough room for our lower arm to fit underneath the leaf spring down here, we'll grab our long bolts, grab our tube sleeve, and then we can connect these underneath the leaf spring. I always like to put a little bit of thread locker, blue thread locker, on the threads as well. Grab the nut. Grab your wrenches and then start securing the assembly nice and tight. And what it will look like from the underside is this view here, where the bolt is resting on the bottom of the leaf spring. Now all that is left is simply tightening down the compression spring, and we do that by grabbing our socket wrench with the 12mm socket. This is going to go on the end nut here down at the base. Then you're going to want an adjustable wrench or a 22mm wrench, and that's going to go on the nuts on the very top of the leaf spring. Now before we start cranking down on things, you're going to want to take these two nuts in the middle of the threaded shaft and move them to the middle of the shaft. And once you have those in the proper position, you're going to want to check the top of the leaf spring where the little view hook attaches to the top of the leaf, and make sure it is centered on the leaf spring. And now we can go ahead and position our wrenches for tightening down the spring, and simply just start cranking away on your wrench on the lower side, and that's going to pull the spring towards the upper part of the leaf spring. Now once you start seeing daylight between the spring coils themselves, that's when we're going to break out these little tiny measuring discs that come with the kit. There's a white one and a black one. The white one is 1mm thick, the black one is 2mm thick, and basically you use this to test the gap between your springs, and the gap determines how much additional load carrying capacity this kit is going to give you. I'm going to be using the 1mm disc, which they say gives approximately a 25% additional load carrying capacity. So really what you do is just take the disc and stick it between the coils, and it's not going through yet, so I got to continue cranking just a little bit more. So taking a closer look, you can now see my little white spacer disc is just barely fitting through the coils, and that's what you want for the measurement. If you're going up to the 2mm black disc, you want to make sure that you have the same effect. Basically the disc just slides right in between the coils, and the gap is set appropriately for the tension. Now the last thing that we have to do is simply lock down the coil spring using these nuts that are on the threaded rod. You have one nut that goes down first, and then the second nut goes down to lock that nut in place. Of course, we're going to grab some thread lock, and then we'll finish locking down these nuts. The finished product should look something like this, with our two nuts on the threaded shaft there locked all the way down onto the large spring. And of course we have the proper gaps on our spring that we set earlier, and then the bottom nut and bolt is locked tightly into place. Alright, so we've completed the installation of the Roadmaster Active Suspension on my 2010 Ford F150. For most of the trucks of this class, the installation process should be pretty similar. F250s, F350s have some additional requirements which are covered in the instruction manual, so make sure you always follow your instructions, not just the video. Use this as a general guideline. So we're going to get the wheels and tires bolted back up, torqued down to spec, bring the truck down off the jack stands, and then take it around the block. Alright, so go ahead and jump in the truck here, take it around the street, and see how it feels. I really have no expectations for the active suspension with no trailer attached. That will be the true test, obviously, when we get the 22-foot enclosed trailer attached, but the manual for this thing says that you should feel a little bit of a handling difference even without a loaded trailer. So just driving through the neighborhood here, honestly, I don't feel too much. And like I said, I wasn't really expecting too much. When I hit like the pothole covers, or I'm sorry, the manhole covers, you do feel a little bit more stability in the rear end. The back of the truck doesn't kind of bounce and wobble around, so to say. Usually it feels a little loose at the rear of the truck, but a little bit more smooth. We'll get it up to a little bit higher speed and see if it is even more noticeable. All right, we're gonna try to find something a little more bumpy. These smooth roads aren't really helping much in the review of these things, just driving around on the street. All right, so just went off-road in the corner of that turn, and it definitely feels a little bit softer actually in the rear. It's like there's less spring rate bouncing the back of the truck up and down, and it's just a little bit more controlled, which is what these things advertise, is they smooth out the bumps and give you a more stable and smooth ride. All right, so there we go. Now I'm noticing it a little bit more, trying to hit some of these holes in the ground in larger manhole covers and bigger bumps. And yeah, now I can definitely feel the difference. It's not significant, but you do notice the extra smoothness and stability in the back of the truck. It doesn't skate around or bounce around as much like trucks like these do with that light rear end with no weight, you know, over the back of the truck. This kind of keeps things in check, a little bit better control. All right, we got a big bump coming up here. Let's see. And that wasn't as bad as I thought, but yeah, I mean, same result. These things definitely are smoothing out the ride, a little less bounce, and I keep repeating myself, but that's what I'm feeling. So stay tuned, guys. I don't know, I like this so far. The real test is gonna be when we hook up the large trailer and throw a race car in it, and then see how it really makes a difference then on the 2010 F150 with that Roadmaster Active Suspension. So thanks everybody for watching. If you like this video, please hit up the comments down below, like the video, subscribe if you enjoy the content that we have. I'm checking out of here. We'll talk to you all next time.